I've been playing through all the Metal Gear Solid games recently, and I was surprised to find out that Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker is strongly recommended for those playing through the series. As someone that didn't know much about the series before, it seemed like it'd be a watered down, less deep, overall weaker experience than the rest, especially as it initially launched on significantly weaker hardware. But surprisingly, Peace Walker was a fantastic addition to the series, and definitely worth playing through. First of all, this is by no means a lackluster game in terms of depth. In fact, it introduced many elements that would set the groundwork for Metal Gear Solid 5. Weapon loadouts, the mission structure, and the entire concept of the mother base, including crafting and personnel management, was all brought in to make Peace Walker a far deeper game than I was expecting. It's certainly different to the previous entries, with the game taking the form of smaller, concentrated missions rather than one long experience. But this is by no means a bad thing. Some people will prefer this system and others won't. Both have their pros and cons, but for portable gameplay, the shorter mission structure is definitely a win. Instead of the PSP version, however, I played through the game on the PS3 via the HD collection, which I would say is the definitive version. This mainly comes down to the controls, which are just so much nicer to use thanks to the DualShock's dual analog sticks, so if you can get it on there, it's certainly worth it. The actual moment-to-moment gameplay is very similar to the series past, with stealth featuring prominently, including an expansion of the CQC system. This time around, however, there is an increased focus on head-on combat, such as the various vehicle takedown missions. These were some of my favourite missions in the game due to their creativity, especially some of the later bosses, which I won't spoil. All in all, Peace Walker is certainly not one to miss out on, especially if you haven't tried it yet and are a fan of the series. But this got me thinking about some other games that seemed like they wouldn't be that great, but ended up being amazing. Next up is a franchise that, having thought about it, is a really weird concept. The Mario franchise has a lot of spin-off games, and most of them make sense. Driving games are pretty popular, so fair enough, let's make Mario Kart. All the sports games follow this logic too, easy to understand, already popular, makes sense. But who came up with the idea to fuse Mario with Ludo? I've never really thought about it, but Mario Party sounds extremely dumb on paper. A Mario-themed board game simulator with very basic minigames, most of them only requiring 2 or 3 buttons. Sounds pretty boring. And yet, Mario Party has become one of the biggest local multiplayer series with countless entries and millions of sales. I think the main reason for its success is that it doesn't take itself too seriously. Randomness keeps the game lighthearted and quite often funnier, from people rolling ones to landing on Bowser spaces and losing all their coins. But arguably even better than the randomness is intentionally messing with other players. You can steal people's stuff with the boo, or use items to ruin people's turns, or, my favourite, realising that your random teammate in a doubles minigame is close to a star and deliberately throwing the game so they can't afford it. The level of cruelness is entirely up to you, so depending on how mischievous your group is feeling will depend on how hilarious the game will be. The minigames are also integral to the chaotic nature of Mario Party. Some will be entirely skill based and others will have you pushing random levers and hoping you don't blow up. But the important thing about minigames is that they don't really matter. You can be completely rubbish at every game, but that's okay because the random aspects of the rest of the game will mean that you never fall too far behind. And that's because no matter how well you play, how perfectly you planned your turns, how ruthless you were at stealing stars and winning minigames, it can all come crashing down when the bonus stars start rolling in. At the end of the game, stars are given out based on any number of random parameters. So that poor guy that's been landing all the Bowser spaces has just been given another star, which could result in them actually winning the game. You can turn this off or have it so that bonus stars are a fixed set of factors, but isn't it just more fun to know that there's always a chance that someone could get a little bit of extra luck right at the end, even if it seems like they're going to lose? This goes for other things too, such as getting rid of the mini-games that are only luck based, but I feel like it just ruins the thing that makes Mario Party not feel like a boring, regular old board game. The utter chaos. And it will never not be funny to have a massive coin wager come down to a round of Bowser's Big Blast. Star Wars games have been a bit questionable over the past few years, haven't they? What with the lack of campaign in Battlefront 1, expensive battle passes, and of course the whole loot box thing. So when EA announced a new single-player Star Wars game was being made, I wasn't convinced it would be any good. Knowing EA, they'd cram in all the microtransactions that they could, they'd do something dumb like make it so you have to open packs to see what planets you can go to. But EA did the unthinkable and just made a very good game. No loot box nonsense, not even any big DLC packs or anything, just a really solid game. Well, aside from the minor performance issues and falling through the floor occasionally, but I'll take that any day over what could have been a terrible disaster. Really, we have the excellent Respawn Entertainment to thank for this one, and spoilers for the rest of the video, but another of their games is going to come up later. Anyway, as far as the gameplay goes, it basically combines the climbing from Uncharted, the dungeons from Zelda, and some decent mini open worlds for you to explore. But the thing that makes this one of the best Star Wars games is the combat. It's sort of like a Dark Souls system with a little bit more leniency. It carries over what makes the system great, the slow, methodical swings combined with parries and dodges that reward mastery of the controls and knowledge of the enemy. What gives Fallen Order its unique spin on this combat are all the force abilities that you can use. Force pushes, pulls, and freezing enemies in place help to make the whole battle experience more varied. Cleverly, Respawn has also incorporated these force abilities into exploration too, allowing you to, say, freeze a moving platform in place to progress. That, alongside some creative world design, collectibles, secret paths, and great sound design, makes Jedi Fallen Order not only one of the best Star Wars games, but one of the better games of the generation. So if this looks like something you'd be interested in, I would highly recommend it. I'm just going to get straight to the point. The fact that you can turn talking to people and farming resources into a massively successful game is just insane. And yet, many have managed to do it, from Harvest Moon to Animal Crossing. This entry though goes to the incredible Stardew Valley, an amazing indie game combining the best aspects of those series that came before it, with the mining, crafting and fighting of the more recent survival games trend. Farming has never been so normal. That's the weird effect these games have. The normal just becomes relaxing, despite how boring it should be in reality. Slowly upgrading tools and getting enough money to build a new shed or whatever is strangely addicting, and the structure of the game into seasons definitely helps with that sense of progression, as you always have to plan when to plant stuff and when to harvest stuff to make sure you can maximise your revenue without having all your plants die on you. That revenue can be spent on upgrading more of your stuff, and the cycle continues. However, there is much more than just farming that keeps you involved. The mineshaft has a series of procedurally generated floors that you must venture into to find ores to upgrade your tools, as well as rare minerals to donate to the museum. Then there's a town hall that you have to donate all kinds of materials to in order to unlock some very helpful rewards such as a greenhouse or new crafting recipes. And of course there are townsfolk which you can talk to and level up, all kinds of seasonal events, shops to buy stuff from, designing your farm and house, fishing, crafting, foraging, it just goes on and on. There is a surprising amount of depth to the whole experience, while still remaining very relaxing. If this is the sort of thing you've been looking for, especially if you're one of those that's gotten bored of Animal Crossing, give this one a try. It's been a long time since we've had a genuinely good, single-player, first-person shooter. But Respawn Entertainment's, there they are again, Titanfall 2, for some strange reason had one of the best campaigns in recent memory. What's surprising about Titanfall 2 is that the first game was almost entirely online, no campaign in sight. And so going from no real single player at all to becoming one of the greats was quite the surprise. For me, this game reminded me a lot of Half-Life 2, which is certainly a good thing. I think this has to do with how unique each chapter is, each having their own gimmick that keeps the gameplay fresh but doesn't overstay its welcome. The best example of this is that chapter where you get the ability to teleport from the past version of the building to the present day version of the building at the press of a button. Brilliantly, Respawn incorporated this mechanic into every single aspect of the chapter, including using it for puzzle platforming, combat scenarios, and also some narrative elements as well. Then after an hour or so, it's just gone, never to be used again for the rest of the campaign. And that's really how you should use the gimmick. Make sure you're left wanting more rather than being sick of it by the end of the chapter. There are, however, two gimmicks that stick around for the entire campaign. The first is, of course, the advanced movement system. Wall running in particular is like what physics is to Half-Life or what swimming in ink is like to Splatoon. It's the sound, structural support for the overall gameplay and gives Titanfall much of its own identity. If you can get good at it, new combat possibilities can arise, as walls are now totally fair game for evasion and surprise attacks. Many of the world's environments are built around this advanced movement system, and so it never feels out of place and never gets old. Speaking of which, the other gimmick, and the bit that I don't really like about the game, is the actual Titan bit. At various points of the campaign, you'll have the ability to pilot your Titan and start fighting other Titans, which sounds really cool, and it was, for the first mission. After that though, all the fights just kind of feel the same, and in my opinion at least, are a lot less fun than zipping around on foot. It's especially annoying that all the bosses in the game are Titan fights too, although these are certainly more enjoyable than the regular Titan bits. That being said, these sections aren't bad, just a little bit less fun than the rest of the game for me. Aside from that though, this is an absolute must play for any fans of the genre. Trust me, you definitely don't want to miss out on this one. And that's the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end, I really appreciate it. And be sure to let me know in the comments any games that you think deserve a spot on the list. Thanks again, and I'll see you soon.